JB Knowledge Podcast Network. On episode 66 of the Insurtech Geek Podcast, talking about streamlined insurance for businesses with Gloria Vanzo from Pouch. The Insurtech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about tech that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. And we are back again. Good to see everybody. October the 1st. It is Friday, October the 1st as we record this. It's a beginning of a rainy weekend here in Texas, but should be a good one. Of course, we have all of our usual fall favorites. And of course, since it's October, that means it's officially pumpkin spice time. That's right. It is time for pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin spice coffee, pumpkin spice butter, pumpkin spice pancakes, pumpkin spice everything. Gloria, you like the pumpkin spice?
Not as much. I mean, I enjoy it, but it isn't, as important as they ought to be. So I probably need to fix that.
People are super into pumpkin spice. I mean, every coffee shop in the country is the advertising hashtag PSL right now.
And it is. I mean, I do get my excitement out of my Trader Job trips out of it, right? I go and I look for my pumpkin things, but it's not the center of the universe for me. I understand for some people it's 3 months.
Some people,
but a girl's got to have some spot somewhere. That's mine. That's fine.
Yeah. Pumpkin spice, big deal. Big deal in this household. Pumpkin spice. Of course, pumpkins don't actually make a spice. The irony is this is a mix of spices that happen to come around when pumpkins are harvesting, and somehow some marketing genius called it a pumpkin spice. And
it's a really genius American spice combination. You only find that in the U.S. mostly. So You know what?
Yeah.
It is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it is valuable. Of course, I'm a fan of Moroccan spices. I've made my own Moroccan spice blend. I think that's pretty amazing, but you don't see a whole month for Moroccan spices. I think there should be. But
I think there could be a revenue opportunity there. I think you're missing a window.
Yeah. So, Rob, as of a month ago, you moved on to your own thing. Tell everybody what's new in your job world.
I am. Yeah. Thanks, James. Yeah. So I am officially licensed as an insurance futurist. Yes, there is such a license. I'm kidding, but no, I'm excited. I've ventured out of.
I was gonna say, no way.
I have a CBCU and insurance futurist license.
CBCU, CIPCUIF.
That's right. No, I've been just supported by tons of folks over the past 2.5 years since the book launch. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. The pandemic kind of interrupted, as you might imagine. And now with the return of in-person events and business travel and everything, it was time to launch my own thing. So happy to connect and share more with folks. But I do a lot of things, from obviously give keynotes. I actually facilitate innovation workshops, and I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of work. It's kind of bespoke for clients, small and large. So it's an exciting time after 25 years of working in corporate America and many big companies. And I've also worked for the government, the Environmental Protection Agency, and Federal Reserve Board in the past. So it's a huge relief to actually be out on my own. So very exciting times here.
That's awesome.
Congratulations. That's really great.
Yeah. So congratulations. Of course, studio audience is really excited for you and excited about your new launch. If you want more information, of course, go to endofinsurance.com. You can get a hold of Rob Galbraith and talk to the most interesting man in insurance. He can be yours for a fee now. So you can consult with him and have a chat. Now with us, joining us from the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and we're so thankful that she squeezed us into her busy travel schedule. It is so good to see Gloria Vanzo. Gloria, thank you for joining us on the Insurtech Geek Podcast. She's co-founder and COO of Pouch. Gloria, thanks again for joining.
Thank you, guys. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we got a Texas Triangle. We got San Antonio, College Station, and Grapevine. Of course, you're in DFW, which most people don't know if you're not from Texas, that it's its own city. They legally incorporated a city there. Of course, Gloria is just a few minutes away in beautiful Grapevine, Texas. My friends, by the way, the Bonarigos have a beautiful wine place in Grapevine. They have it's called Messina Hoff. It's Texas winery.
It's over on the other side. Yeah, we're right inside Grapevine. So yeah, I know exactly where that's at.
Yeah. Go check that out if you want some good Texas wine. That's right, Texas makes wine. Texas makes everything. Don't ever forget that. And we have highlands and lowlands and hill country and flatlands and coastal. Remember, it's 1,000 miles across, 1,000 miles up and down. It's the 8th largest economy on the planet, and it is the place that the three of us call home. We are glad to have Gloria on the show, and we're going to get back to her in just a second. A reminder that before we get started with our interview, that you can subscribe to the Insurtech Geek Podcast by texting Geek Out to 66866. Make sure you never miss an episode. Just text Geek Out to 66866. Back to Gloria. She did go to Virginia Tech. She got a master's in business from College of William and Mary, a very, very, very old school here in the United States. But she has a fascinating background before that in athletics. And so I just actually wanted to start there because I think there's a lot of life lessons learned in athletics that we take through the rest of our lives. So tell me about your childhood and kind of what led you to be a pro athlete and go to what is now called IMG Academy. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't any different than being the youngest child in a family who was hyperactive. And when we were all little, our parents made decisions to put us in sports because that was a good outlet. And so my oldest sibling played tennis. My mom said, go right in there. And it turns out that I have really good hand-eye coordination. And so I picked up the sport pretty quickly. Tennis is an interesting sport because it does happen between the two ears more than any other. And it is often underestimated because it is a very lonely sport. So you do get to troubleshoot all by yourself, which is by far the most unique skill you need when you decide to do entrepreneurship. There's just you, yourself, and maybe one more person. And so I think if I look back at my history and that journey, and it's still, the other thing is so great about tennis, it is a lifetime sport. I mean, I still play it all the time. I still have people that I've known for 30 years. The community extends up to you're 80 years old. You can still play nationals, which is just so remarkable to get to learn from these people. So I troubleshoot well because I've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah, one of my favorite books on learning is The Inner Game of Tennis, written in the 70s, I believe, by a tennis coach who realized that the less he said, the better of a coach he was, and really taught people how to learn by observing and then letting your body, your second self, as he talks about, respond to that. And certainly I learned a lot about how to learn from a book about tennis. Yeah, tennis is really just an amazing sport, and it is one thing. Now, I'm currently down for the count with an ankle surgery, so I can't play tennis right now. But I also love. I grew up going to Latin America my entire childhood, and I have been operating in Argentina for 20 years, and so I love this crazy game called paddle that I'm like a hardcore addict of. Have you had a chance to play paddle, and if so, what do you think?
I like it. I like it a lot. I play pickleball as well.
Yeah.
So, because in Texas and Grapevine, pickleball is a great thing.
Yep.
So, and I love it. It does bring a third dimension.
Yep.
So like I said, if I've been fortunate, my hand-eye coordination just lets me get away with everything. So I've enjoyed it. It's just that paddle in Dallas is only one club that has two courts.
Yep. Same
it's
here.
Actually quite limited. So that's why it's like tennis or pickle. And then pickle is a great way to be part of my community. Grapevine, like you were mentioning, for those folks who don't know, Grapevine is the Christmas capital of Texas. So we have a very, very tight-knit community. And so pickleball is how I get around with my neighbors. And so there's a text message going around. We all get together. We have tournament courts, which I think is a huge luxury. And we love it. So pickle is my alternative because it is hard to get paddle here in Dallas.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. I love pickleball. Super fun. So let's jump in. After your undergrad in economics and your master's in business, you jumped straight into a product role at Progressive Insurance. What about in the insurance industry attracted you to go there? Obviously, with a econ degree and an MBA, you can go into pretty much any field. What attracted you to Progressive?
So I think it's just the people. This story is always fun for people to hear. So my first interview was Kay Terry, the co-founder of Surround Insurance. And my second interview was Steve McKay, which is my co-founder at Pouch. So that just gives you a sense of what that place was like. There's just an amazing group of talent at the Richmond office. I met these people and I fell in love with them. And then I also understood that I was what I call or refer to as a late bloomer in my education. When I was a professional athlete, I did swing a tennis racket to pay for my school. And so athletics and academics were sort of weighted equally, but, academics were not my number one. It was 1 and 1 or whatever we're going to call it. And so when I got out of there, I had the opportunity to realize I was actually quite quantitative and I did have a passion for data. And at the time, Progressive was leading the world when it came to underwriting sophistication and the operating model. They had the general management model set up and it was really great. And so I hit it off with Kate. She was my first boss at Progressive and I worked for her. And then that's really when my journey between technology and insurance, got going and I haven't looked back ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's really what hooked me on insurance too, was the people I met, the relationships I formed, the friendships I formed. I had one of my life mentors in insurance was just over here in College Station this week, and visiting me and my partner, and it's just what we do, right? We go see him all the time. He comes and sees us. We travel together. You end up going on trips with people. I mean, it's a very, very, very people-centric business because you're, building systems that carry risk for the planet, right? And risk requires trust, and trust requires relationships. It kind of the nature of this business lends it to be. If you're really into connections and relationships and people, it's a wonderful business to be in. You went through a few other places like Dry Factor, Acceptance Insurance. You were a product leader at Lightspeed. Then you went over to USAA for a couple of years. Got into risk management solutions at Solera. So walk me through those progressions. Like, what were you looking for? What did you learn along the way in those different stops?
Yeah, for sure. So my experience at Progressive was rather unique because I actually got an opportunity through Steve, who said, "Hey, don't you have a life in retail? We're sending people devices now." This is back when Snapshot was called My Rate, right? So it wasn't even Snapshot yet. And so I realized there was this world where technology meets product and there was a delivery mechanism. So after Steve transitioned out of Progressive to found Job Factor, Steve said, "Hey, do you want to come and do product here?" So Drive Factor was actually founded by Steve and Mac, and it was a telematics provider and what I tend to refer to as the first wave of Insurtech. Those were the companies that were primarily B2B, and they were primarily providing support and products to insurance companies as they were looking to enhance. From there, I realized that having grown up at Progressive is a huge luxury, but that running an insurance company without that degree of telemetry and machine was going to be a different animal. And I really learned that through our customers at Drive Factor. So I went and had an opportunity to run a small carrier, the product team at a super regional carrier, and it was an exceptional experience. So really getting an opportunity to do product in a non-standard just teaches you so much both about claims and underwriting that you really don't know as much because Progressive has this amazing machine that just generates rate, right? Because they have so much accuracy and so much fidelity. And so I learned that through my customers, I needed to get some more of that. Then there was a need in the market. The data that was coming out of, Lexis and Verisk was super fragmented, and I wanted a 90-second quote, and I needed to buy 9 products and spend a disgusting amount of money to get to a really fast quote. So I went to Verisk to build Lightspeed, which essentially empowers you to do a 90-second quote. Again, use that data to make the world better in a simple way. And then from that, there was this opportunity to go and really enable what could have been a vehicle ecosystem at USA. This is an aspiration the organization had for a very long time. And since I had experience with the Verisk Data Exchange, I had experience at Drive Factor, taking the data from raw to normalize and delivering that for insurance, it was a really nice opportunity to bring that together inside an ecosystem. And we were able also to advance USA's aspirations to have a safe driving program with telematics. So the Safe Pilot program was part of what the team that I was a part of built. And then I got really frustrated with claims. Claims didn't make any sense. The more and more I played in the claims space as it related to what I did, I realized that there was a lot of fracture in the workflow and that a lot of the waste that was engaged in claims associated with poor service was actually fractured workflow, that the customer didn't have the proper handoff points because there were so many hands touching different things and there was no connectivity. So at Solera, there was a huge opportunity to take Captor as a workflow solution across the entire life of the claim, all the way from prior to even FNOL, which is bringing telematics data in, all the way through salvage, if there was a salvage claim. So I have chosen my career path to learn the entire flow of insurance, which certainly has been intentional. I think we have lots of specialization in our industry. There's some amazing experts, but we are unable to serve our customers as effectively as we can. We don't understand their journey. So I've spent a lot of time in my career pulling data forward at different spots in the journey. And at some point I realized, okay, we can't continue to do this in a decoupled way. We need to be able to bring experiences that are both coverage-centric and experience-centric for the customer. And so that's kind of how you see the demarcation in my career. It's actually been functional roles outside the organization that have enabled me to kind of tie all the pieces together.
Yeah, and I know Rob was at USAA, and he's there in San Antonio, and I think he actually has a question related to y'all's mutual former employer.
Sure,
I do, Gloria. It's funny, just as a quick aside. So USA has over 30,000 employees, of which I think half of those have worked in offices in San Antonio. So inevitably, right, run into folks at HEB, which is our local supermarket, or other places. Oh, do you know so-and-so? And you're like, yeah, there's a 99.5% chance I don't know that person. So it's kind of funny. We overlapped for a year's time and never had the opportunity to meet. So it's great to finally meet you, even though we were teammates unknowingly back in 17, 18. But speaking of which, I actually just spoke with somebody that may work there earlier this week and enjoys the company and all that, but is having an opportunity to make the leap, has an offer or an opportunity with an Insurtech, and was just kind of asking me, my thoughts on kind of the pros and cons. So this is a question that happened to be with this gentleman, but I do get quite a bit, and so based on your experience working both for some large insurance carriers, but then also for some smaller companies, and now obviously with your startup. Maybe you could just share with the audience, if there are folks out there that are working for a traditional incumbent and thinking about making the change. There's pros and cons just as there are for any decision. So yeah, I just kind of would love to hear your thoughts on somebody that's out there, that whether they're thinking about starting their own firm or going to work for a startup from an incumbent. What are the pros and cons as you see it?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And that's a question I get very often offline as well. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of answer it. I'm going to talk about the way that I weight this personal experience, and then I'm going to give advice to folks who might have grown up in a more traditional corporate American environment. So I'm an immigrant. I'm the children of immigrants, and my father was an entrepreneur. So I did not realize that my dad did not have a paycheck until I was 28 years old, where he actually asked me, so how does that work? How do you get a paycheck? And that was a really surprising conversation because I had taken for granted the fact that I had grown up in that household. And I think many of us do that. We don't realize that. So I would say do an analysis about what your background is and that your individual truth might be there, about what your true appetite might be, right? I chose to do corporate America actually because I got tired of being my dad's daughter. My dad was a very successful man. And so I actually wanted to create my own path, and I averted my own family to then just go back and do what we do. And so I think this is a really honest way to say to yourself, wait, this is always something I've been passionate about. There's some people who are amazing and pick that up right out of their families, but that was my weird journey to get there, and it was always in my DNA. That's the short story. The second piece is what you're passionate about. I think for me, recently I spoke in another podcast. Speed of delivery and solving the problem is probably 1 and 2 for personal satisfaction for me when it comes to my career. And so you have to rank what your personal satisfaction is about. Now, it doesn't preclude me from wanting to work with amazing people, but I think in a corporate environment, those two things are just naturally not as prioritized because there's a sheer size and volume of people that need coordination. So if you find that the coordination exercise and if you find that support system inside corporate America is providing you a great deal of satisfaction, then that's not something that you can easily trade off. And people don't have that conversation openly because what happens is in the other side of the equation, whether it's a smaller company or whether it's an Insurtech, you're going to have to be independent. You're going to have to lead more. So the counter is if you feel like you want more, if you feel like you want to lead, if you feel like you can put more pieces of the puzzle together, then definitely Insurtech is incredibly satisfying because anybody in my shoes needs anyone to do 9 different functions. And so if that's what gets you going, if you're one of those people that has the multi-puzzle thing and you find yourself like, oh man, I wish I could do this person's like thing. Or if you find like helping this person in your office doing their role because you're excited about it and you want more, I think that's a really good demarcation to continue to have the conversation. Insurtech is not as risky as it used to be anymore. Like when I went to Drive Factor, man, our budget was tight. I remember that there was a lot of things. You have very established Insurtechs now. And so I think the risk threshold profile is different. And if you can have that conversation openly with your family, I think the risk profile looks different and you should do it. And last but not least, new is not bad for me, but it's very unpredictable and I thrive in it. Unpredictable stuff is great things I can thrive in. Maybe not so much for other people. So if new is complex or if new is not your thing, then perhaps Insurtech might not be the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific answer. And yeah, like I said, there's definitely pros and cons. And I think it's important, right, to ask the right questions because not all startups are equal. They're at different stage of maturity. They have different cultures. I think sometimes a startup, right, you can be working some very long hours or you can be working more traditional hours that might be compatible with what you're doing on your incumbent. So yeah, I definitely think it's not for everyone, but it is for certain folks, and it's just another avenue rather than a lot of the traditional incumbents. Quite frankly, if you go from a Progressive to a USA, whatever, it's actually not that different a work environment. But certainly, if you go to a startup, it can be. And the final thing I'll kind of mention is the stigma, right? I think folks like myself, it's like, hey, you grew up, you kind of had this lifetime employment. And I do think that a lot of incumbents, quite frankly, are kind of taken for granted. USA and San Antonio is a big fish in a small pond, or was for many years, but there's so many more opportunities now, folks working remote, et cetera. I think a lot of incumbents need to rethink their talent strategy because, quite frankly, some of their more talented people are the ones that are going to be more inclined to leave. And so it's like, okay, we have this retention problem. And it goes both ways. A, we're losing good people, but B, the people that are staying with us actually may be our least innovative, our least creative. And again, that's a blanket statement. That's not true for everyone, but who's walking out the door? Is that some of your future leadership that, in the past, right, if staying at the company 30 years, would have made it up to a senior level. So I think a lot of incumbents haven't really come to grips yet with, hey, it's not a bottomless ocean of folks out there, and you actually do have to compete for talent.
There's one more thing I'll add to that, which is investment banking is having to pay more and improve environments to compete with the tech firms. I think that's pretty alarming, and I think that's a really good signal. The second one is there is a misunderstanding between having a pizza party and having good working environment. We get a lot of talent who works for us because we do keep good hours, but we have highly engaged senior staff with training and educating teams. And that's what people are looking for. They want mentors at their jobs and they want to grow. And so I think that whole idea of come to me in a meeting at the end of the week and you've got it done, that's become incredibly old style and it doesn't really fit the need of the new employees.
Yeah. It's a good discussion. Let's pivot now and actually talk about what you're doing different. What makes Pouch and this company, what makes it Insurtech? First off, like, why is it not just yet another insurance company? I mean, and the line between insurance carrier and Insurtech is getting a little blurred because so many mainline carriers are adopting so much technology to combat startups. So help me understand what makes Pouch Insurtech, and what have you done there that really is dramatically different than others in the space?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the back of the house first. So we have an open platform implementation for SaaS, and we have 6 different SaaS interactions together that took a month and a half to put together. So I think speed of delivery makes us Insurtech by definition. Our tech stack is also connected to 4 individual telematics connections. So as in tiny, insignificant MGA, we have more telematics connections than the large carriers. And we're really proud of that, but that's because of the way we built it. I think we're also different because we're using technology that's already in the market that consumers value. For example, a relationship with the product line Force by Mohio, which is already purchased by small business owners to track their vehicles. And we don't ask them to change anything. Just give the customer the product and we take care of the data. So they manage the customer experience and we use the data embedded. And I think that makes us Insurtech as well. This is not generally how it's done in telematics. The carrier wants to put its brand forward. It wants to sort of say, this is our telematics app or this is our telematics product. We're breaking that convention. In commercial auto, that's rather easy to do because companies like Geotab, Verizon, Ford, everybody's got commercial connections already existing. So it wasn't hard. We didn't have to convince customers that they needed the product. They were already buying it. So I think that makes us different. And then last but not least, we have aspirations of coverage flexibility. So we are building the coverages that we believe are needed in the market on our paper and on our fronting and our reinsurance capacity. But we're also partnering with companies like Coterie and Symbol to provide a flexible bundle, irrespective of where the relationship is born, so the customer gets the coverage that it needs. So I think for us, it's coverage, it's technology, and it's as well as approach.
And you're starting with only coverage in Arizona and Illinois, is that correct?
That is correct. And we are now fast follow. It takes us about 6 weeks to get a state out. So now we're going to do Georgia and Texas next.
Nice. It's good to see you coming to the great state of Texas. Obviously, I know as a resident, you want to see that happen as well.
Yep.
What's the experience like for the client? Because I'm a business owner. I've got I've got 253 employees. I have people that drive. I've got, so I've had to buy commercial auto for a long time. What's the experience like for me different than what I do right now?
Well, I think there's a couple things we have to acknowledge about commercial that perhaps is the curve of maturity that we're looking to bring forward. So small business owners with under 10 vehicles have a distinctive need. They're about 52% of the commercial auto premium. Let's define them as light local. Those guys sometimes the need for what we call a light package. So it's sort of a simplified package. As you move into property, you have that BOP need. So it's different for you because we do have what we call the guided experience. It takes about 3 minutes from buy from pouch, about 1 minute and 42 seconds or 43 to get a quote. So really simple, easy coverages to understand, very simplistic way to execute, very simple way to put in your credit card information and purchase. But when we launched, we went B2B as well. So agents have the same access and the same visibility as we do for B2B. So we decided that was really important. So when we go to a state, we go to agents and we go direct. And then third, if you have an existing relationship with Geotab or you're a Mohio customer, you do have access to our coverage and we pay for your software. So I think part of what we're trying to do is those will bring additional value. A charter for me as a founder is I want to move insurance from past rating to forward rating. And I want to use real-time data to begin to do advice on safety and prevention. And so I think for me, that's a big component of what we're building at Pouch. And so it's easier. You get free software and hardware to track your vehicles. You know what your vehicles are at. And there's a host of features, by the way. You can tell your next customer you're coming. You can do maintenance alerts. You can do all kinds of things that these amazing companies have already built, and customers love the product. Yeah. So it's about safety and prevention, and it's easy to buy.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I, of course, as a lifelong software developer, love the fact that you're bundling in the software and hardware suite. Did you write that software and hardware suite? Or
No, we partner with companies. And that's the 4 connections. Like if anybody's got a good product, customers are buying it. Because we had the experience from Drive Factor to take raw data, normalize it, and utilize it for an insurance score, and we have our own scores, we just did it. There was this moment where everybody was waiting for the cataclysmic event that all the data was going to be normalized and it was going to look like credit. And we're like, dude, it's been 15 years. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. And so we decided to have unique scores by data type because not all data is being produced the same. But the rating qualifications are the same. We're still talking about the same 5 safety rating variables. So our attitude is, I feel like when we started this was I don't want to say punitive, that is the incorrect thing, but it is about selection. When Progressive started these programs, it was about selecting the best drivers and offering them the best rate to get rid of the fat, right? For us, it's actually about safety and prevention and putting information in front of the business owner. I have spoken to a customer who has a brother-in-law who was a problem, but it was a difficult conversation that no longer is a difficult conversation because the data says so.
Yeah, because it said he was a bad driver.
It said that his behavior was risky and it could cost the business money. And that's all we're doing. We're putting this information forward to help businesses operate. One of the things you have to be really careful with small business, which I'm not saying it doesn't happen for personal, but in small business, you're also costing that owner's ability to protect and give his family a literal meal. Like that's their earning if they're not in that vehicle. So you have to be incredibly sensitive to speed And so if I keep a customer safe, it isn't just about their well-being, but it's also about what they bring to their families. And that we're very passionate about that, because when you support a business owner, you're also supporting their family. That's different than perhaps as we think about it in a personalized policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I gave some now questions. I know Rob has the next question. Rob?
Yeah, Gloria. So I guess I'll package this kind of into two questions. So would love to have you talk a little bit more about, right, personal lines and then commercial. We've seen a ton of digitalizing in the small commercial space, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. We've talked to several founders and startups that are in that. I'm curious, like how much is kind of emulating perhaps that personal lines experience, and then what are some difference? You mentioned the distribution, right? Supporting agent channel and direct, whereas a lot of folks like Progressive in USA, right, are primarily direct. I know Progressive has some agents out there. And then where do you see the future of small commercial? I know one of the challenges, particularly from an agent standpoint, is that, hey, it may take just as much time to really, attract and retain those types of businesses as it does a mid-market account or a larger account. And so, from a commission standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. But yet, if you give them the right digital tools, they can attract those businesses. And obviously, from a carrier perspective, these customers tend to be very sticky. They tend to be very profitable. It's really just kind of, acquiring them and getting them. So would love your thoughts kind of on where we're at, the evolution, and then where it's going.
Yeah, for sure. So having had the fortune to have been at Progressive, where it had already had maturity in digitization, right? So I started working there when there was, already a website in 50 states, like it was a thing, right? It was very important what I learned about what is digitization, like maturity, right? When I worked at Progressive, the problems that we were solving were next generation rating, which was telematics, while many competitors were still trying to figure out their digital journey. And so for us, right now, our aspirations are match and meet the market when it came to digitization, meaning enabling a digital quote, enabling digital transactions for self-service, and enabling easy access to coverage. We're just market matching because, frankly, that's table stakes. That's how we need to see it. What we're passionate about, really excited about, is two different things. First is the right coverage for the right business class. So you guys may have seen in my LinkedIn, I don't know if you met her. Her name is Goody. She's our chief safety officer, who happens to also be our mascot. I'm just going to show. I don't know if it's going to show, but it won't. But it's on my LinkedIn. And so Goody just got a huge revamp, and she is now supporting multiple business classes, which she's got a whole new wardrobe. And so the whole reason of us doing this is because we know that an electrician has a different need than a carpenter. And we know that a carpenter has a different need than a landscaper. And we know a landscaper who lives in the Northeast has a different work profile as a snowplower than you would in Texas. And so what we're really focused on is building the coverages around the dimension of the business so we can help them walk that journey as they evolve. Another big component of this, which I'm super excited about, is how many people are part of the gig economy and what is it that the coverage that they really need for the weekend protection. So you're actually going to see innovative policy approaches with personal lines and business inclusions rather than exclusions. So people can have telematics and they can be on and off as needed. We need telematics for business so they can tell us, hey, I'm doing this gig, this wedding this weekend, and I need additional limits. And we're going to be there for them for that window. And so you're going to see on and off coverages associated with that. We're going to partner with companies. Obviously there's one that comes to mind that does very short-term policies. And so we're going to partner with them to make sure that their customers get discounts and they get the right coverage, while also having a very inclusive personal auto policy. So you're going to see us go there. We're really passionate about that. We're super excited, by the way, because we just got the first draft and it's great. I think the evolution has to be to guided experiences. So when I built Pouch, we didn't have a lot of time. We started building in January. We launched in May 11th. That was really important to me. We wanted to do it really quickly, and we wanted to do it very well. And we realized that everything we built for the agents. We just never even thought about it. And so, for example, today, if you're on your agent portal, you can email to the customer can finish the quote and pay, and the agent gets the same commission, no problem. Yeah. And so we've built a lot of digitization for the agents on behalf of the agents for their customers. Well, we feel that's really important. So I think this hybrid supportive approach is also a big thing for commercial.
And you know how it is with business owners. We don't buy one line at a time.
No, we don't.
That's not how business owners buy insurance. I sync all my renewal dates. In fact, I synced my personal lines and my commercial lines renewals so that because I use one brokerage for everything, all my personal
Yep.
lines, and I have operations in multiple countries, and so I synced it all to one renewal date. That's not 12/31, by the way. It's not a 1/1 renewal, which is a nightmare of a renewal date. And so we did that so that we could buy everything at once, but I love the ability to quote, but certainly tailoring the agent experience is important. And so it sounds like you licensed policy software, you licensed claims software, you licensed telematics, and then y'all did a month and a half of stitching work to pull it all together into a company and a product under an MGU. Is that about correct?
Correct. So our fronting capacity and our reinsurance capacity comes from our investors. So that's one of the big things that has empowered Pouch to be as effective as we are. And you're going to see now, and I realize, Rob, you may know more about Multiply than James, but it's probably a good time to talk about it. So a press release will go out on Monday about a new company that I'm leading. My relationship with Pouch is not ending. So Multiply, spelled without the lettering, with a Y at the end. So it's MLP. People really hate it, but it really works. MLTPLI is going to be an accelerator. We are fully funded to both run operations and make investment capital. And our intention is to take seed companies to market in under 6 months. And very similarly, if Pouch were to look for a partner that would give it capital, know-how, technology stack, fronting capacity, as well as reinsurance capacity, we would be it. I've heard us being compared to the guys at Boost, which is a huge comparison. Please don't do that. Those guys are really great. The difference is that we're making a strategic investment and we're also empowering this organization to move on its own, right? So this is more of a strategic investment, guide it, get it out the door, and then they can grow. And so Multiply is already talking to 2 different potential investments that will be announced shortly. And you will see us, Pouch becomes a Multiply portfolio company. We already have another organization, Viva Seguros, and then you will see the next portfolio company announcement come online very soon.
That's exciting. Where can we find out more information on Multiply?
The press release goes out on Monday. Website goes thereafter.
That's awesome. That's great. So we'll make sure to push that out so you guys can go check that out. Super interesting. Rob, let's bring us home with our last question.
Yeah, Gloria. So I'm really fascinated by kind of everything you're doing, both at Pouch and Multiply. Any final thoughts on kind of the future, since you've been, an industry veteran, yet you're obviously shaping the future of the industry? It feels like you're creating kind of almost like a turnkey at Multiply. So I'm just curious, like, is this the way of the future? Are we going to still have incumbents in 10 years? What's your view?
Of course we will. Come on, we're a highly regulated space. So I'm going to tell you my aspirations or what I want people to talk about our industry, right? So if I'm part of a meeting and, there's a banker who does like retail banking and there's a mortgage guy, and then there's a gal who comes from tech, and then there's me representing Insurtech, I want them to tell the world about our industry as in like, look, you guys got your act together and you started operating more efficiently regardless of your regulation. You were really able to get some good ideas out to market fast and really make coverage a focus for customers so they have what they needed. I think from the pandemic, we all learned that customers needed protection that we have never contemplated, but it takes a long time. So I hope that in 10 years, we are operating as efficiently as other industries. I hope that in 10 years, we have the talent that is in insurance shining through, because the environments are allowing them to deliver these things in a way that is efficient and highly gratifying. And I hope to see more companies have the support of companies like Multiply, right? So investors and entrepreneurs have a shore-up ability that they have this sort of guided opportunity, because everybody needs a system, everybody needs a billing system, everybody needs filings. So if we all need that, why do we need to go redo it? Let's go focus on solving the problem. And that's really what I want people to say. Like, you guys figure that out. You're highly regulated and you put that on a train track, and then you did some great innovation that was meaningful to consumers. That's what I want folks to say about our industry. I think we're knocking on the door. There's many wonderful companies doing fantastic work. We have a really bright bunch of people. And I just don't think that perhaps they don't get the respect because we're highly regulated and complicated. But in 10 years, maybe the banker will be like, yeah, that's right. You guys do what we do in 30 days in like 30 seconds. So maybe they'll take us seriously and say, yeah, and investors are speaking, by the way. The investment into Insurtech is heavy because I think we're hitting some of those pillars in stride. And I'm really hopeful for industry that my peers are going to make a big difference.
It's awesome. Great feedback. Rob, I know before we go for the show, and this has been a great discussion with Gloria. Gloria, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Before we let you go, Rob, I know you had a couple of news items.
I do, yeah. So biggest news this week is that Loop Insurance, and we talked to their co-founder, Carrie Ann Nadeau, not too long ago here on this podcast. They launched in Texas in the middle of August. They announced their Series A, $21 million. So a pretty good size Series A. So congratulations to Carrie Ann, John Henry, and the entire team at Loop Insurance. Love to see their launch, and I'm sure they'll have continued success. And then this was actually kind of under the radar for me. I happened to see it on LinkedIn this week announced, but kind of refer back to the Insurance Journal from June. But USAA, we've mentioned them as a place Gloria and I both work. They acquired an Insurtech called Nobler, who I hadn't heard of, to offer members usage-based auto coverage. It kind of ties into some of the work you've been talking about, Gloria. And I know that's something that we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, UBI. And, there's obviously questions about, do you create your own or do you buy? So this is obviously USA making a big investment in Nobler and usage-based insurance, something they see sticking around.
Yeah, they're saying, we're just going to acquire that.
No, I mean, it's a $100 million transaction for 13 states. Jason Frichet, who used to be at Metromile, and another one of their founders. So it's a Metromile kind of offshoot. And Jason's a bright guy. So it was just a really good payoff to delivery for the time they started. So congratulations to them. They did a really nice business model. And it was an easy build buy decision, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Great stuff. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Gloria. Appreciate it. A good discussion on Insurtech, on auto, on the future of commercial. We spanned the topics today, and I want to thank Gloria for joining us again from the airport, squeezing us into her schedule. And we, of course, appreciate that. And we want to thank you for joining us for the Insurtech Geek podcast. This has been powered by JB Knowledge at jbknowledge.com, all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, along with my co-host, Rob Galbraith. That's endofinsurance.com. Big thanks to Jim Greenlee, our podcast producer, and Kara Dalton, our creative producer. And thank you for joining us. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech. So enjoy the ride and geek out. See you next time.